All right, hello everyone, and welcome to our fourth Casuals Free for All tournament. I am Blues here with Urand,
Hello.
and we have Clippy Colonize, Andreas G, and Zorbaz this game. Iron and Silicon starting double, Glass Colony double electronics.
This is almost a very gentle map across
Almost.
Silicon.
Yeah, the resources just aren't quite directly where you want them. There's definitely room for a scientist in the northwest. Um, Nomad's going to be difficult with that electronics.
Well, everyone should have some problem expanding because Silicon is not very abundant and glass is going to get really expensive relatively quickly.
Not so sure about founding expansive down there first on weak iron.
Yeah, I'm fine with this found, but I don't think it should have come first.
Right, there are a lot of expansive spots as we can see by where everyone ended up founding. Ooh, Colonize going with the Nomad. Let's see how that works out. He does have the double silicon price to start to help him push to the 20 electronics, but it still will be a bit slow.
Yeah, that is one thing you have to be very mindful of as a Nomad, is that you don't get any starting resources. So it takes a little extra effort to get the upgrade stuff to get to level 2.
One thing we really just saw is Clippy taking advantage of the double iron price to start getting to HQ2 a lot faster than Andreas G or Zorbaz. Only now just moving into steel.
Yeah, generally I'm trying to think who has the better found this game. I think that if Colonize can push to those upgrades quickly, his found is pretty good, even though he just lost his high water there. I also think that Clippy's central position is pretty advantageous, but at the same time, Andreas is the closest to the silicon, which will be a very important resource.
Right, besides Zorbaz, I think they all have nice advantages to their founds.
And the name becomes on Zorbaz, which is really painful.
Yep, getting shut out, that's steel.
One thing that Zorbaz found does have that could be good. I'm not sure if it's going to come into play, but it's the adjacent geothermal plant, which lends
Right,
itself for an amazing superconductor or geothermal borehole, or both.
always nice to be able to combo those when you can. Colonize moving to the HQ2 electronics makes some sense with electronics being so expensive. There isn't a great other market for him to have moved into, besides maybe glass with the price rising on that. But his silicon isn't that strong, so this is a reasonable play, especially with carbon not being expensive.
Having a strange idea about Colonize needing to possibly take the other high silicon. Because if he's going to move into electronics, that's going to put a toll on his silicon production. Then glass is going to get really good really quickly. It's already a very good resource. I feel like
Right, I
he's
think,
just going to have a hard time upgrading if he goes into both those markets.
yeah, that's definitely a reasonable move. It also makes silicon just so much harder for any other player to move into.
Yeah, there's always the slam drilling option, of course, so you can't really get a monopoly on this map.
Well, Zorbaz really wants his adjacent geotherm. Can't blame him for that, though.
That's
I'd really rather have the 32k.
yeah, I think this is the point where you let it go.
Yeah, I think even the 28k bid by Andreas G was a bit much, but
Yeah, probably.
there's probably a decent reason to expect that Zorbaz might push further with his comment in chat, which I'm not sure whether or not players are allowed to speak in chat for this one, but it's okay.
I mean, nothing substantial has been said.
Right.
One problem with taking that auction for such a high price is, of course, that even if he gets those patents and he gets a lot of power production out of this geotherm, he is at best going to cover his massive debt and not
Right. He's
actually gain.
already so deeply in debt. He hasn't gotten the geotherm up yet, even. And everyone else is going to get into power before him, so it's going to be rough.
It's very fortunate that he got the upgrade to level 3 before the death tick happened, because he was in C for a while.
Meanwhile, Colonize still doing really well over there, largely off of aluminum. He's been collecting a whole lot of it, and there's that aluminum shortage.
Yeah.
Zorbaz,
I think it's a little strange that no one really pushed into aluminium all that much.
right. Andrea's skipping it entirely. I think Zorbaz might have only just gotten into it. I'm not sure. I know Clippy got into his early.
I'm not so sure, but say in Clippy's position, I would be tempted to take 2 tiles, and then they're close enough that you can connect them to your base later on.
Yeah, this wind probably isn't stronger by enough to justify having them separate. With 2 tiles of wind, I think you can have them separate because that'll be fine all game. With 3, that's a bit dicier. But he is expansive, so he can get away with that a bit more.
It isn't also particularly good wind. I'm actually kind of wondering if an idea here is to transition one of these into a pleasure dome, and that would kind of make it work.
That is a good point. Right next to the colony, a lot of expansive players. Zorbaz really being aggressive on these auctions. He's already indeed dead. 14k is a lot more than he can afford for a network virus.
Yes, I'm not sure it was worth it. He maybe was hoping to just push up the price, but I think that was a risk that couldn't have paid off really.
Right. On the other hand, are boosts available, and he already used his network virus, so he can't even have a fun boost network virus play later.
That play is usually just style.
Yeah, it's
Not
very
necessarily
easy very easy for the player just to freeze themselves to shut it down, but if the player doesn't think of that, then it can be very strong. Colonize still definitely running ahead, getting over that initial electronics problem by producing his own electronics by... Well, he actually never moved into glass, interestingly. It's just been Andreas.
Interesting point that the high silicon tile went off to Zorbaz, who is not actually producing any silicon. Maybe that is actually a good thing, because shipping would be quite expensive, and
on the other hand, silicon is so expensive right now that he could be making a pretty solid profit.
Yeah, I'm not sure that is a good decision, but it definitely is an understandable one. It's interesting that Clippy actually built a pleasure dome, or so it says.
Yeah, he's building one on the other side of the colony, not where his wind is.
I'd imagine that having 2 pleasure domes is perfectly fine in this game, so he still has that option open to him.
Right, he's also already going for virtual reality, so entirely reasonable. Interesting that he decided to put his patent lab next to the workshop, machine shops. It'll eventually be a nice optimization center, but not sure if it was necessary to put it out there right now.
I'm not a fan of that, because it takes time to ship the building there, to build it, then it takes time to build the other building.
There's no advantage to having it out there right now, so it's kind of just burning time.
Especially since he's not level 5 yet, so he still has his last batch of claims available to him when he gets the upgrade.
Zorbaz. There's really no fear. Already 174k in debt. I guess he knows to back off now, but It's definitely a very dangerous situation for him. He's going for geothermal borehole, which will be a nice patent, but power's down at $6, so it's not going to help him anytime soon.
Unfortunately, and
He
Andres
might
is
just
making
be
the
dead.
move.
Zorbaz can defend himself, but forcing him to spend all this money defending
He
himself.
does have to cancel the patent out.
Yeah. And it
And
looks like he might not.
yeah,
Oh dear.
unfortunately, just either hadn't realized that that is what he had to do, or maybe just didn't manage to do it in time.
Okay, Clippy starting going to Andreas. That is the right move. Colonize and Clippy can work together to finish off Andreas, but it doesn't look like it's happening.
It doesn't seem
Instead,
like they have the cash.
well, if
So
they sold out of their stock, they would have plenty. But at this point, it looks like Andreas is just going to get away with this buy and go into the late game with a pretty substantial
yeah, the
boost.
momentum has been lost. I think now the correct play is to try to pick up the rest of Zorbaz's stock.
Yeah. Okay. Having the 6-4 split is still pretty solid. Clippy getting away with a pretty nice boost on this Pleasure Dome. It is defended, but 720 a second.
It's kind of
And
crazy.
now it's kind of extra. That's interesting. I don't know that I would have done it that way, mutinying and boosting the other Pleasure Dome. Probably better to mutiny, turn it off, and then boost after your own boost runs out.
I'm not a fan of that, especially since he, even though power is dead, he still boosted that geothermal plant. Well, I guess it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. Also, I feel like Andreas is actually having a bit of a, what's the word? He's a little stuck now after he managed to get that buy.
Right. Clippy really making a nice run with all this Pleasure Dome money. Andreas might not be able to defend himself. He does still have good market in reactors. But we'll see. Clippy has enough to buy one more, he sells out, and then he can finish the buy.
Andreas is pretty close to defending himself, though.
Right. He should get there.
There we go. I will say though that if this buy had happened, this would have put Colonize in a really interesting situation, because right now he still has a lot of stock.
Right.
Still doing okay, but Clippy would have had just 2 people.
Right. I'm actually kind of worried about Colonize right now. It's spending so much money buying up his own stock. He doesn't really have any late game push going on. Besides this patent lab that I believe he has mutinied. But he's not even using it, so... Well, he got thinking machines. Okay.
Yeah, this is the part of the game where we're playing my favorite game of what kind of late game plan do you have, what advanced buildings are we going for. And Clippy clearly has a lot with pleasure domes, although many people have moved into pleasure domes, including the sub-AI.
Yeah, always a bit unfortunate when the sub-AI decides to start putting out lots of pleasure domes, but I guess that's something you do expect.
Overall, they're pretty good.
Right, they're pretty solid. The Thinking Machines play is going to work out, but Colonize does need to actually be able to afford one.
Well, yeah,
Silicon.
he never moved into extra silicon, which is a huge problem.
I believe he actually did have a pair of lows up north for a while. I think he returned them. But yeah, this is going to be a problem. The silicon price is still rising.
and Andreas is the first to move into the off-world market. I guess if no one really harasses him, then he might still run away with this game.
Right, no one has the off-world spotted yet. It's looking like an optimization center, which is a pretty reasonable thing to have there. So we might just get away with it.
Interesting point that Clippy has been sitting on his patent lab, and yes, it was mutinied at some point, but he only has 2 patents still. So yeah, that really doesn't justify the positioning of the patent lab, I think. If he had put it on next to his base, then this spot would have been available for an optimization center.
Right.
And I feel like now he is tempted to just finish his patents and then transition it instead of having an optimization center functional already.
Thing is, finishing slant drilling doesn't really even get him much. Just extra carbon, really, and
he's moving into silicon tile as we speak.
I see. Alright, that's somewhat better then.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense, I think.
Was there a core sample auction at some point?
I don't think so.
Because I don't remember this medium silicon being right there for colonized.
Huh.
Well,
neither do I, but I'm going to guess that if there was a core sample auction, he would have sampled something next to his existing silicon, so it's unlikely that there was one.
well, either way, interesting. Andreas G moving into a second off-world. Clippy is deep into his stock, but Andreas G might still survive pretty easily. Clippy doesn't have that strong source of income right now. Pleasure Dome is nice, but it's pretty heavily contested. And it definitely doesn't stand up to off-worlds.
Exactly, it's this problem of not really having any late game advantages over someone else. He has devoted a lot of time trying to get the stock in Andreas, while Andreas has been spending a lot of his money on just building up the off-worlds. And so Clippy got his stock first, but now Andreas has much more income. Meanwhile, Colonize is kind of stuck as well.
He's looking to get up a second off-world. He has a defended hologram tile, but is struggling to put together the cash. Part of that is going to be the water situation, I think. He has 5 tiles and water pumps, which is not crazy given the water price, but Clippy getting in the way early definitely hurt him.
I think these tiles may have been recent, because he has reclaimed at least a tile a while ago, so...
Right, he reclaimed that electronics factory next to the off-world.
But yeah, I'm afraid he's just way late for the stock game, and part of that is because he spent so much money on his own stock early on.
Yep.
So it's basically a race between Clippy and Andreas, and it's kind of an interesting one, because Andreas is indeed dead, so he can't react to whatever black market happens.
And Clippy does know about one of his off-worlds, so if he can keep that mutinied enough, Andreas eats that dead tick, he can still win this race.
Granted, the mutiny is not necessarily worth spending. I guess you can use one, but it's so much cheaper to just freeze it up.
That is fair. I would have been tempted to mutiny it just because it's pre-boosted, but...
Well, with the boost, I guess it's well worth it. Otherwise, you're just spending 70k to get 70k. Well, the benefit that you're denying 70k, but...
The other thing that's been going on this whole time, Clippy has been making a lot of large-scale transitions. Moving into a lot of electronics like this probably ends up being okay, since electronics are just so stubborn, production so low on them, but like before he flooded chems, he flooded food a bit. He's been struggling a bit on making money on World.
Grant has the nanotech patent, so he was doing the good old early beta strategy of just crashing markets and transitioning out, but
Not quite as effective as
well,
it
yeah,
used
not as crazy as it used to be, but reminds me of that a little bit. I mean, when you have
to.
12 electronics factories, that's very reminiscent of the good old days. Or not necessarily good, but old days.
Andreas G did pay off a fair bit of debt, not mostly from power actually, and that's been keeping him alive somewhat. Still running a fair bit of behind Clippy, and Clippy does have the option of doing a nanotech scrap to finish things off if he has to, so he should have this, but it's going to be close.
One interesting point is that Clippy finally moved into optimization centers. And he has moved into 2, and he actually is outpacing Andreas on optimizations.
Right.
Granted,
Okay.
Andreas didn't move into optimizations early himself. He's also sitting on the buyout.
There we go. Yeah, he's been on 100% for a while. I'm not sure where exactly the rest of his money was. He's canceled out of his optimizations. He started nanotech scrapping things to finish things off at the end. But at this point, he should be solidly in control of this game, despite not having his any off-worlds. Maybe just needs to get this debt under control a bit.
I'm a little surprised that he actually managed to get to the buy, honestly.
Right. I know when he started buying into Andreas, we were talking about how it seemed unlikely he could beat the two off-worlds, but I guess between managing to find that one and using the right black market, he managed to pull it off. I guess Colonize also helped out a bit, keeping the glass and electronics prices high by moving to off-worlds.
And at this point, it's pretty clear who's going to win because Colonize hasn't really managed to set up anything that amazing in terms of income.
Right.
At least not enough to take out 3 people simultaneously.
Got off to a nice start, but kind of stalled out at HQ5. And you can't really do that when you're against a bunch of expansives.
Yeah, I feel like everyone in this game could have been a lot more aggressive about advanced buildings. Just moving it into those optimizations earlier, or getting a hacker array, or something like that. I guess Andreas was maybe more efficient in that he was going for off-worlds, and off-worlds are just expensive to set up.
And Clippy also did a pretty nice job with the Pleasure Dome Patent Lab, just the question on the Patent Lab placement.
Yeah, it was a little slow, is what it felt like. The decisions themselves were really solid, I think. Also, the very late optimizations seemed a little strange to me, but it seemed to have worked out really well. At least well enough.
And Clippy did have the right idea, getting out of the optimizations at the very end of the game, not pushing the issue there when they were completely unnecessary.
Yeah, he cleaned it up really well, I think.
408k from Pleasure Domes. It's actually almost as much as Andreas G made off-world.
Hmm. That is interesting. Really makes me wonder how he managed to get to the buy, because he sure he had a lot from entertainment, but Andreas had a lot from Offworlds. He had a little more from the sub at the time.
Right. Andres actually made significantly more money than Clippy at the time he was bought out. The 1.284 mil to 976K. So it's, I think just largely Clippy getting into the stock at the right time, having that advantage, and then I guess Andreas ended up having debt issues too.
Yeah, I think that may have been the most important factor. And obviously Clippy buying into Andreas while he was in debt and while his stock was lower than later.
I mean, it's a good aggressive play that worked out better than we expected. All right, guess we'll go and set up the next lobby.